Jen's going to pull up the presentation. You can start whenever.
Okay. But you have to announce the meeting.
Let's see if I can do this.
It looks like that.
Okay, no, that's not gonna fit.
No,
Yeah, if that's an HDMI, it's.
we don't have any of that online. I need a port, so.
There we go.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the New Britain Township special meeting for Friday, August 29th, 2025. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Chair comments. The board had met in executive session before this meeting to discuss personnel and litigation matters. We have a presentation today from the Minor Centre. We have.
Would you like me to make introductions? Just
Yes, please.
for those of you who, like, you all know us out here and on the team. I'm Nicole Beckett with the Minor Center for the Study of State and Local Government at Lafayette College. I'm the Associate Director for Public Service, and this is Jennifer Smathers. She's the Associate Director for Municipal Services. We're former municipal managers and we're practitioners in the field. We help municipalities out.
I just need to get it.
All right, Jenna, you have it everything there. Good. Do you prefer a stand, sit? Does it matter to you?
Up to you.
Okay. I think we'll start sitting just so we can refer everything and walk through it.
No, the microphone. That's what we would like you to be, so people can hear it.
Everybody can hear. These are the same mics I had in my office, my thing. All right. So, okay, can everybody hear? Can you hear me okay? Okay. All right, so, Jen, do you want to start?
Sure. So thank you for having us back to give the presentation for the visioning and the executive summary. When we first started this process, Nicole and I talked about it in depth because of the fact that I'm relatively new with the center. So she really brought me up to speed with everything. And basically, we were expecting to come in and find the need to do focus on like infrastructure visioning and community development visioning and finance visioning. We never anticipated that we would hear from so many supervisors and staff that there was a concern with the actual governance. And governance is really the basis for everything that you do in government. You have to have a solid foundation in order for everything else to flow properly and to be effective and efficient. And that's what we try to do. We try to work with local governments to make sure that they can run and operate effectively and efficiently.
And I think it's important to add, this is not just New Britain Township. We commend New Britain Township for going forward with the visioning process, to have that conversation, to have continuously worked with the township. And we see this situation in many municipalities, whether it's a recruitment or a strategic plan or an organizational analysis. There is the foundation that, governance can always be improved. We can always be improved as people. So it's just, we're here to provide a solution for that. Both Jen and I being former managers, we've talked about what it would be like to have somebody come in and say, you need to study, and how that would feel. So we want to just mention in our conversations and what we see in the field is oftentimes this is very much so welcomed because it will help the team out. It'll help the board out. It provides a plan, a blueprint, if you will, for moving forward. And, I think about it in my municipality, something like that would have really helped me forward. So we just wanted to mention, we hope it's welcomed and we understand why there might be hesitation between the cost, and we understand studies are always one of those conversations that's difficult to fund or to make that decision because it is just paper. Well, it's only paper if it just sits on the shelf. So if you follow the plan, then that gets you moving forward. So it's definitely not a criticism in any way. Governance, again, we could always be better. So understanding the transitions here in the township over the last 2 decades, it's definitely something that can help you along. It's a best practice through DCED at the state level, and we wanted to come by and just mention those things walking into this.
So one other thing I wanted to add too is while while the governance portion of it may not be something tangible other than a report, by following the actual reports, that's actually going to lead you to the tangibles. It's going to lead you to successful projects for like Cotton Park or for the police station and things like that will be able to be successful by following the actual plan that's presented. What we did was, we wanted to go through first the priorities that came out of the visioning session. So up on the board, you can see the first priority that was pretty much identified by everybody unanimously. We all discussed this when we were doing the workshops. It came out in the conversations. The governance is the big one. And governance is basically made up of the communication systems, your accountability structures, your operational coordination, strategic implementation, and your role clarity. My opinion, communication and role clarity is the big one, especially when you're trying to get projects accomplished. You have to make sure that you have clear protocols with the communication between the board, the staff, your professionals, your engineer. Everybody needs to be communicating properly. And you have to have the clear roles because everybody has to know what they're going to be doing as part of the process. If people don't know what their role is, it's going to end up leading to issues down the road. You're going to end up coming up with cost overruns, or you're just not going to get the end result that you're absolutely looking for. Do you want to add anything to that?
Communication, again, that is whether that's in our professional lives or our personal lives, that's something that I think we're always looking to enhance. And there's always a way to be better and to define that better. So, that's something we hear in every process that we do is communication. And we can't emphasize it enough. Along with that role clarity, as Jen said, it is important to know who should be doing what and, having everybody on board with that. So that's all I'd like to add there.
The other priority action frameworks that were identified in the workshops, the number 2 priority was the police station project. Number 3 was kind of lumped together as the infrastructure, road maintenance, and your stormwater management. Number 4 was your technology and your process improvements. I skipped number 5 because I have a separate slide for number 5. And then number 6, which is your quality of life enhancements.
So we decided to take it backwards and go back for like starting with the projects and then going back to the org assessment to show how it all ties in. And one of the priority action discussion from everybody was the regional cooperation. So as we know, fire and EMS now into the future will be shifting and changing, and there's going to have to be a change in the model. So, that is something that was talked about along with equipment sharing, collaborative grant applications, the fact that you have the borough surrounding you and the other townships. So regional cooperation was identified. And in order to do that, that's something that it's not just a one-time deal. It's a constant relationship building. It's a constant communication. And it's in order to coordinate that, you need to have the internal partnership in order to go external. So everybody can be on the same page as far as the goals and what you're seeking. And I know there was a lot of conversation with the supervisors and talking about wanting to be a leader in something, and looking at leadership in the local area. So with the strong internal governance system, it could be something that the township can naturally evolve from a participant to a regional leader if successful in moving forward with the recommendations in the organizational assessment. So you could be driving initiatives rather than responding to them. And I think that is something that in conversations with the supervisors would be desired, to be a leader. So this was just an example. There could be leadership in other things, but that is something that I thought you could tie it together to maybe speak to the conversations we've had. And then the big one, we'll go into the police station project. I know you've put a lot of thought towards this. I know there's a lot that goes into it. I know it's multi-year, Chief. I'm sure your wheels get spinning when you start to think about it. Dan, the same with you. That's a big project. You're talking about a multi-year, multi-fund project. You're talking about a whole lot of elements from start to finish. So we tried to phase this out and show a workflow. When I started in my borough, the first project that I walked into was a police station rehab project. So they were moving out of one building, moving into another. And I caught the tail end of it. So I did get to see the aftermath of the things that were not thought of and how that carried. I also got to see the stress of the relocation and the planning that took for a 24/7 operation. So we just wanted to walk through. That is really small.
It is really small.
How
I
is
tried
it-
to make
how
it
is
as
it?
big
So
as like.
can we, I don't mind does that here. Let's see here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Where's back?
So you're talking, and I know you're thinking about all of these things. You have phase one, planning and financing. Doing a needs assessment, having the funds authorized, deciding how you're going to fund that, finance it, whether it's through grants, whether it's through taking out debt service or whatever that may be, raising taxes. You have a lot to think about, and then getting community input. And then you have going out for professional firm selection. So developing an RFP, going through the proposals, negotiating the overall professional contract, building those relationships, because throughout that process, you want to be able to trust the people that you're working with. You want to know that everybody's on the same page. And then going through design, which will involve multi-players from the township, because you're going through zoning, you're going through planning to have all of those things completed. Getting everybody on the same page as far as building codes and making sure that the needs of the police department are being met, as not just for today, but in the future. Thinking ahead, there's just a lot of moving parts that will go into getting you to the next stage of construction, which in itself could be an animal. You're dealing with maybe possible multiple contractors. You're have to continue operations 24/7. You have to continue what you're doing while going through that process. And this may not be the only project you have going on at that time. So, there could be a lot of stress caused by this. There could be a lot of clarity needed. And the better the organization is, the better you will be set up for success. And then, then there's also going into transition. So moving in, making sure that everybody has what they need, and continuing to operate that whole time. I know police departments, and I'm sure, Chief, you know of some. I know Norristown just went through it. They had like a year of rehab. And I know it created, what was that? 3 years. It created some chaos. So I think it's something, I've been in multiple municipalities who are preparing for this, and that organizational structure needs to be there to be successful. It's not that it can't happen without it. It can. It's just, what would that look like, and will you be successful? So we did try to do hypotheticals, worst case, best case, if you will. So you have multiple stakeholders making multiple decisions that affect all phases from start to finish. And, let's see here. Let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit better. Okay. So if you're looking at phase 2 with professional selection, having the board, the police chief, having everybody on the same page, what if there are different preferences? How do you get through that? And then the firms could be getting, conflicting direction from stakeholders. Once you get into design, the operational needs may conflict with budget constraints. The community room thought process that may change mid-design. So this is hypothetical that these are the things that could happen. But without that strong organization and without everybody being on the same page, that's going to cause a lot of confusion. If you went into phase 4 with construction, change orders, getting them to the board, having the board understand the why of them, talking about them before they come to the board and understanding them. What if it's something that needs to be handled right away? Getting all of that coordinated. And then again, 24/7 operations. So you need to continue the operation without disruptions. Situationally, the board, the manager can be overwhelmed by the project, along with having other projects at the time and continuing the day-to-day. And then you also have delays that may be caused because you have to prioritize. So in that hypothetical there, something like this could result in an 8-month delay, $500,000 overrun, and damage to relationships. If you go into it as a strong organization, let's see here, and with governance as strong, You could have a unified selection process. You could have that integrated design. Making sure that the numbers meet where you're going to end up. You can have that smooth execution. Maybe preventing change orders. And then having the police department functioning while going through the construction process. So again, if you have other projects going on at that time, making sure that everybody's on the same page and that those projects are running smoothly. If successful, if going through with the analysis and following those recommendations, your budget could be maintained, your partnerships could remain strong, and you could have the project completed on time. So they're just hypotheticals as to things that could go wrong. I could have made this go 50 different ways as to 50 different problems. Tried to keep it pretty simple. Let's see just what else is on here. So the organizational assessment would then you could have that success factor as it applies to working with those professional services. Remember, they can only be as effective as you are internally. And that goes for the staff too. Everybody could only be as effective as each other in an operating team. And yeah, so that's the point on the police station. I mean, does that make sense? Does it make sense as to how and where you could end up if not properly functioning internally? Chief, does this make you nervous at all, the thought of the project or moving forward? Good. Right, and then, Jen, I think you were next.
Road paving, yeah, this one's a little bit hard to read as well. So this is another hypothetical. Well, it's probably not really hypothetical because most municipalities do road paving projects annually with their liquid fuels. So this one has to do with priority number 3, and your infrastructure, road maintenance, and your stormwater management. And this, just like with the police station, it goes through the whole.
Do you want me to do it for you?
Yeah. It goes through it starts off and it goes through the different phases. Of course, as always, you have your assessment and your planning phase. With you're making sure that your roads inventory are in place. So like one of the first things that I know I always did when I was a municipal manager is I made sure that I had my capital improvement plan in place and I had my road paving project schedule for 5 years out. So I knew which roads were ready to go and which ones were ones that could wait a little bit longer because they weren't as bad off as the others. So you have to have your road inventory, you have to have your stormwater mapping completed, and you have to have a ballpark in your mind of what the cost estimate's going to be. If it's a 2-mile road, it's going to be one cost. If it's a 10-mile road, it's going to be very, very different cost. So you have to look at the challenges to make sure that you have the staff capacity to take care of that. The road equipment, if you need it, if you're going to sub it out, or if you're going to try to do it in-house. And then you have to also look at your weather constraints and your schedules. Your next phase is obviously the big part is the funding strategy and making sure that you have all of the funds in place. When you're looking at grant applications, especially for the bigger projects, when you have multiple layers of grants, you have to make sure that you're looking at the grants, you're looking at the deadlines, you're looking about when the money's coming in. Is it a reimbursable grant? Or is it something where they're going to fund you the money up front? And then you have to coordinate all your sources. So from start to finish with the grant, you got to know who's going to be writing it, who's going to be administering the grant, when is the money be coming in, when is the reporting period going to happen, to make sure that everything is taken care of properly at the right time so that you don't jeopardize any of those funding sources. The last thing you want to do is have a grant given to you and then you find out that you didn't do something properly or you missed a deadline with something and now your funds are in jeopardy, especially if your project is already underway. You don't want to leave a huge gap in that funding. So it's really important to make sure that you have your internal governance under control so that you know who's handling those steps. Everybody knows who's responsible for what so that you can actually get through the project and the funding part of the project with no issues at all. And then obviously phase three, the coordination for the construction. Again, that's kind of sort of a little bit what I talked about with all the funding and the streams lining up and everything coming together. Those deadlines with grants are very important. Plus, if you're applying for a grant, and you have it in your mind that you want to apply for a grant, you also got to make sure that you're leaving yourself enough time to get the information submitted. A lot of times when you look at grants, I've had it happen to me, where you look at a grant and it's just like, okay, this isn't something that I can do on my own. I'm going to need to pull my engineer into this. So you're not just looking at your own schedule. You got to make sure that you're going to be able to work with outside contractors and your professionals, and that you're not putting them in a bad place and telling them, oh, by the way, I need a construction estimate and I need it tomorrow. Well, they may not. That's a huge thing. You can't just throw that kind of thing together. So the coordination is going to be critical. And then you have your project execution with working with your contractors. If you're using your liquid fuels, you need to make sure that you meet all of the contractors' responsibilities with PennDOT. And I'm sure like Dan and Alexandria and Ryan, you know about those requirements with liquid fuels. You can only use the money for certain things. You have to use PennDOT approved contractors, and everything has to like, you have to basically dot every I and cross every T with PennDOT to make sure that at the end, when they are doing their audit, the liquid fuels audit comes in, they don't say that you did something you shouldn't have and say you have to pay the money back. That's not something that you want to have happen. And then basically your project closeout. So all of those phases are really important to make sure that you have your governance ready to go and you know who's doing what, and that you have the proper communication throughout the process. And I can't do what you were just doing. And then again, with like, when you're doing multiple layer projects, and a lot of the funders like you to see multiple layer grants. They don't want to be the only funding source. So when you're dealing like with your liquid fuels, your general funds and any grants, when did it go back up to?
Here we go up.
Yeah, you could. Just through here. You just got to, this is just kind of showing you, and you can look through it later if you like. We can email everybody this presentation so you can zoom in a little bit better. But when you're looking at like your money, the different sources, this kind of just this section here in the middle just shows how it flows and how it's important to make sure you are on top of like your budget approvals, the allocations, the deadlines, the application, everything. Just okay, now you can go down to the bottom. I'm not going to go through every one of those. So if you don't have the proper organizational systems in place, there are things that could be problems. Like, and I mentioned these a little bit before. You're going to have deadline conflicts. There's possibility for cash flow gaps, having to pay money back because you haven't followed the grant guidelines properly. Your staff could be overwhelmed by the coordination demands, especially if you're like throwing something at your engineer at the last second and you need it by tomorrow. Everybody has to be on the same page. And that's why it's so important to have that proper communication channel, the strategy in place, and know who's doing what throughout the process. If you don't have those, you're going to have a project that's probably going to have overruns. You're going to have to worry about maybe possibly even paying money back on your grants, or the project just doesn't get done. And that actually kind of harms your relationships with funders too. You have to give money back, or you make a mistake on a grant. The next time you apply for that grant, they're going to think twice about giving you the money because you didn't prove yourself that you could handle it the first time. And then obviously with, I can't do that, you did. And then obviously with the strong organizational systems, your project's going to go off without a hitch. Everything's going to be in compliance, your reporting's in place, your staff has clear processes, you know what your outcomes are going to be, and you know that the funding is going to be available for the project.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
So just kind of interrupt just a little of the presentation. So do you, based upon what we've said so far, do you feel like if you had to do these hypothetical situations, like a 10-mile road paving project for like maybe a road that had a big sinkhole in it or had multiple issues. Or the police department, if you're ready to go today. Do you guys think that you'd be able to get the projects off without a hitch? How do you, what are your thoughts?
I don't think we'd have a problem with Public Works and the police department.
Okay,
They've worked well in the past together, and I think we can pretty well count on that being done correctly and on time.
is this the crisis? Okay.
So we wanted to take it beyond the projects and look at it, you know, as far as how else does this support the township? It's in the everyday, and we thought bringing something up, you know, like a crisis response. What does that look like, and how things can be enhanced by having a strong organization and having that strong foundation. So while it's outside of the actual visioning initiative, we thought it was important to kind of bring in another element to say, what about in the case of a crisis? Are you ready?
At least I don't think.
So this isn't something I think that we want to go into extensive detail, but we did want to lay it out to say, you know,
That's a concern we've all had for a while and continues to be, because just watch the news.
and no organization is perfect. And, you know, I think there are the times where everybody is really tested. But it is important to be thinking about how do we all play together to make an effective or a terrible situation better. How do we help the community in that time of crisis? And Jen, I think, you know, you have a really good story to talk about that and how it talks about coordinating all of that.
When I was the manager in Lower Mount Bethel Township, you guys, I'm sure you guys probably remember the storm. It was in July of 23. It was a really, really bad storm. It was, and Upper Makefield also had some really serious issues with the flooding too. I believe you guys probably did as well. Our county executive basically called it a biblical storm. We have a tiny little creek that runs through our village area, and there are a lot of houses around the creek. And we got, I think it was like 12 inches of rain within a short, very, very short period of time. And it caused a massive flash flood. So the creek basically swelled up and the water just gushed. And I think it was around 5 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call from the 911 center, basically saying, you need to get yourself to the township right away. There are cattle floating down the creek. So like 5 o'clock in the morning, you're really not thinking straight. And you think, and at first I thought, this is a joke. Somebody's just playing a joke on me because of cattle flying down the creek. Okay, well, it wasn't actually cattle. It was actually lambs and pigs. But it was a crisis that we had to jump in and we had to take care of right away. We had people who were trapped in their homes. We had homes that were devastated. Thankfully, nobody was killed. I know during that same storm, other people were killed. Families were, oopsie. I'm gonna make you be in charge.
Yeah, I can do
Okay.
that.
But basically, there's a process that you have to go, and you have to make sure that your internal controls are in place in order to handle a crisis. Your immediate response is basically trying to get the Emergency Operations Center prepared. And I'm sure that the chief is all aware of all of this. But this was something that I had just been made the Emergency Operations manager. And I had taken a whole bunch of classes, so I knew I was prepared for this, and we had just done our emergency operation plan. So we were basically able to go through this whole process as quickly as possible. No lives were in harm. I mean, they were in harm, but nobody was injured. And we had the proper communications in place to notify our residents, to work with all of our departments to get PennDOT out there. We had a list of all of the people we were supposed to be contacting as far as the emergency services with the county, with PennDOT, to get them out there to close the state roads that were flooded, to get in touch with the school districts so that the residents would have a place to shower because they couldn't return to their homes. A lot of the homes were substantially damaged. So having the proper organization and foundation and governance in place helped us get through this process. We were able to immediately get Pima and FEMA out there for the recovery efforts so that we could do our damage assessments. We could get the federal and state disaster aid. We didn't actually get federal aid or any state aid, but we did get the Small Business Administration out there so that they were working with the families who were severely damaged. We also had connections with volunteer organizations already in place so that there was organizations that could actually come out. We had four or five families that had bridges over the creek and the bridges were washed out. So we had to get somebody out there to help them put those bridges back. And with the volunteer organizations, they actually put those bridges back up. They got grants to help replace the bridges so that people could access their homes. So this is just another example of how you need to have your plans in place. If I hadn't just gone through doing my emergency operations plan and making my list of all my contacts of everybody I needed to contact in an emergency, it probably would have been a disaster. I wouldn't have known who to get in touch with and what the proper channels were and the steps in order to get FEMA and Pima out there. I even had my contacts in place so that I was even able to get Governor Shapiro out there to look at it, as well as Susan Wiles when she was the US representative. But that was all because of the proper planning. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened.
So again, we just go into the without and the with strong systems in place. Again, a crisis will often reveal those gaps or those issues internally. So you want to get ahead of those. And then let's just last slide here is before I go into that last slide, we talked about 8 critical organizational elements. We talked about them in the beginning. We talked about them throughout the process of the visioning workshop. Communication, the information flow between the board, management, and staff. Task analysis and assignment, the clear responsibility and accountability structure. The roles and responsibilities defined. Collaboration mechanisms, the interdepartmental coordination and workflow efficiency. Delegation frameworks, systematic task distributions and oversight protocols. Coordination processes, having project management and a timeline and having accountability to that. Community engagement, making sure the residents have feedback and that they're a part of the process. Resource allocation in budgeting and funding. And then strategic planning on whole, that long-term vision implementation capacity, which is where we started, walking in the door. So these are not academic concepts. These are all practical tools that determine whether you will succeed with your strategic priorities. And every organization has them. So it's just, they can always be strengthened. And it's something here that will definitely benefit you, I think. The last slide was just understanding walking in the door. There's, I don't know that everybody's even on the same page as far as moving forward with the org assessment. I've talked to quite a few of you at length to just explain the why of it. So I think that is already a clear picture as to if you can't make a joint decision or a combined decision, a decision to move forward with this. And this is something that can clearly set you in the course of action forward successfully. Something that we talked about since I've been working with you from the center. It's been one of those conversations that have started early on because it's not a negative. So if we cannot get on the same page with this assessment, what will the other projects look like? If this is something that is an investment, not just into those projects, it's an investment into your entire organization. So I don't need to really fully go into detail, but I think it's an important conversation to be thinking about. I think it's important to look at these numbers here. Let me see here. Your current situation, you have mixed board support for this assessment, which demonstrates those coordination challenges. You have different perspectives on priorities and approach. That's the same dynamic that would affect any project. There's questions about the investment value. That's a natural response when coordination frameworks aren't established. And how do we tie it together? You could see a large project would run into the same decision. So, mixed board perspectives, questions about cost versus value, different priorities and different expectations, and coordination challenges throughout, which would run into any project. So looking at the numbers, again, if this is something that you were to move forward with and it sits on a shelf, it's not worth anybody's time, including ours. We don't want to go and take a dive. You have all worked with me. You know how I work. You know my ethic that goes into everything and the work that we'll do. So understanding that, I wouldn't want you to move forward with this if you weren't a believer in it. If you are, and you think it can help, then it's worthwhile. And the investment will go well beyond your projects. Just want to make sure we didn't cover anything else. I mean, you look at it's like 0.1% of 0.01%, I think, of the projects in whole.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
You have on that slide, you have current reality questions about 11,000 to 13,000 assessment. Is that the approximate cost of doing this assessment?
Yeah, so the proposal that we had provided was, we try to estimate, we try to give you the best idea that we can as far as these numbers go. And this scope of work is about 100 hours of our time, I think it was.
It's page 26 of
Yeah.
the report.
So there's the report itself, and then there's the executive summary with a proposal. And the last page of that shows that there's 3 different phases of it. We would hope to be able to start soon and finish up by December. That's about 100 hours of work, and we're guessing the investment would be about $11,000 to $13,000. And we would continue to communicate throughout that whole entire process. There's a lot of moving parts. It's a deep dive. Every organizational assessment we do is different because every municipality is different. There's a foundation as to where we start, but we try to identify the core problems or the core issues or the core solutions and work from there. So this is what we think will help, and what has been proven in the other ones that we've done, if followed. So if it's going to sit on a shelf, it doesn't do anybody anything. But I think there's just been enough conversations here in New Britain Township that getting everybody on the same page, having that vision, having that long-term plan, this is the start of it. Transitions will shift, and transitions cause chaos. I mean, transitions create instability, and that happens in any community who has gone through different managers, different staff members, and different board members. Elected officials come and go also. So this is something that will pay off now and into the future.
So how would you do this just practically? I see the methodology, but what is your actual actions that you'll be taking to get this information?
So it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of talking to staff. The board, we really don't need to go back to the board too much at this point. We would communicate with you through the process because we've talked to you a lot in the last 1.5 years, 2 years. So I think at this stage, it would be more so talking to all of the key players that are involved in coordination, talking to all of the staff, going through and looking at your documentation, your procedures, your processes, looking at your policies, making sure there's compliance with everything, making recommendations as to what you can do better or what you're doing good.
Descriptions.
Reviewing job descriptions, looking at making sure roles and responsibilities are clearly defined for everybody. It could involve training opportunities. I know professional development is something that we talked about a lot in the recruitment process. And that is something that there could be recommendations coming out of that as far as what's available. And then also financial management and administrative operations. We will take a deep dive into the finance and see how things are being done, how the internal controls are set up, how funds are being allocated, how you get to make those decisions. So it's a lot of talking and reviewing. And then
And we're gonna be also looking at like what you had talked about when we spoke with you. Some of you said, we're interested in having a grants person, whether it's a part-time person or a full-time person. There was talk about what you need as far as office staff, if you needed somebody up front. We're gonna look at all of those things as well to determine, okay, do you really need a grant person? Or is there somebody on staff that can take that role and run with it and do the grant work? So those types of things we're gonna look at. Kristen had mentioned she wanted a finance system. We're gonna look at that to see, okay, didn't you mention that? No, I thought you were looking at a new financial system.
Oh, system, I'm sorry.
No, the system, a
No,
new
that's-
financial system. That's been dropped. Okay, so we won't look at that. But we're gonna look at what you guys had talked about in your visioning. And we're gonna make sure that what you said you wanted to see by the end of your terms, whether or not it's possible to get there. It's not possible to get there, or if you really don't need it, like you may not need a grants person. There could be somebody on staff that can write those grants and oversee the administration of those. So.
The townships had multiple structures of administration over the last 15 years. So to have somebody really look at it and study it is something that can be beneficial moving forward also. Getting the right people on the right seats on the bus. So it's not just getting them on the bus, it's making sure that they're in the right seats also. So we'll be looking at that, and really it's just a huge overview and getting everything on paper.
I think we have a great basis. I think if we want to move the next jump, a quantum leap of doing more with what we have, I think this would be a good idea of working out what the groundwork is, what we have a great basis, but we don't seem to be able to get to the next big leap. So that's how I see it as. And me as a board member, totally no idea if I'm doing an appropriate thing, the wrong thing, what I should be doing. I would see it as a great help to the whole organization as working on ourselves, because I know I'm not perfect as a board member. And I think it's a way of helping us from someone else from outside looking in to help us all work out what we should be doing.
We always like to, and I'll just take it from what you just said, Cynthia. We always like to remind everyone what the Minor Center's mission is. And that is to help local government be more effective and efficient. We're a nonprofit. It's not like we're here that this benefits us in any way. We're here to help. And it's always really important to mention because it makes us different in what we're doing. Trust me, there's enough work out there to keep us busy. So it's just a matter, I like to reemphasize that. But at this point, we'll take questions from anybody. We'll, conversation, whatever it is that you would like to go over.
I was gonna say that I think this is long, long overdue. We've had a lot of transitions. And some of the workings of this township are still a mystery to me. We had one manager that came in and threw out so much stuff. We don't know, we can't find this, we don't know where that is from prior managers, and everyone's system was, I don't think we're very, this is not a criticism of anyone sitting in this room, but I do not see this township as being able to hand off, should something happen to somebody in a key position. Well, maybe one or two departments, chief, to hand off, should an emergency happen to someone new. It's find and figure out and guess and whatever. And the price you're putting out, 11 to 13,000, I'm sure we could probably save that from our engineering expenses, because our engineer is doing work that's not really engineering, because we need that support to run the township. And I'm just going to mention, because I know some people are not sure this is worth the money, that they approved a $14,000 consultation fee to a furniture salesman to do space planning for the furniture they sold to us under a prior manager. And they didn't think that was too expensive. This is far, far more important. And I see savings down the line, and I'm absolutely for doing it.
To go off of that also, there's the cost savings. There's the ability to save because you're being more effective and more efficient. So whether that is failing at coordinating a project correctly and having overruns in the project cost, whether that is having missed grant opportunities or, having just inefficiencies in operations, this can help save money in the big picture. It's in running the numbers here, it was 0.13% of your annual budget when you look at that. So if you think that there's an issue, like if you're having a hard time making that decision, I think it's definitely worth the conversation to lay this out. I took the financial statements and evaluated them against all of this and really kind of ran into how can this help? So, there's definitely an investment in your entire community. You're developing diversification strategies. You're enhancing your grant systems. You're seeing what's available. You're enhancing your regional cooperation systems. You're enhancing revenue growth and overall just striving for being better. Striving for taking a lead in something, striving for that operational excellence. And I think it's really, this is a great opportunity really for the township to take that initiative.
Does any of our department heads have any questions for the Minor Centre? No questions, no comments? No?
We welcome it. We welcome we welcome thoughts, opinions. We're here to have the conversation because we want you to be on board if you're moving forward. It's really important because this in itself will be stressful. It'll be stressful on staff. It'll be stressful on the board. It'll be stressful to get through it because of the fact that we're diving. In my experience in doing these, it's not always fun, I will say, because you're asking questions and people take it personally, and it's never personal. It's just overall just trying to help.
I just wanted to make a comments. There's two things in your presentation that really one was just something that I've been thinking about for a long time that I've been worried about, and that is how would we manage a crisis should a crisis happen? And I tend to try to be the person that's optimistic. And I have full confidence in our police staff. I have full confidence in our public works and in our
Admin.
administration staff. I was like, what do I call the rest of you guys that are in the office? But the part that I think like individually, everyone is very, very capable. It's that question of how would we coordinate? How do you know who's your main point person? Is it the township manager? Is it chief? Is it public works? How do we coordinate that? How do we get all of those elements moving? And every time I see a horrible natural disaster, whether it's interstate, locally, or even, across the country, I think two things. I think the initial thought is, oh my gosh, how sad, how tragic. And I have that compassion. And then I think, and this is a little bit selfish, but I'm going to admit it, I think I'm really glad that's not us, because I don't feel confident in our ability just right this second to be able to collaborate effectively. And I don't ever want to be in the news because we mismanaged something. And then the second thing is, I was one of those people that was questioning, is this valuable? Is this not valuable? And you brought that up and you highlighted, I think it's right there, the professional observation coordination challenge in real time. And if we can't all get on board about understanding what this is that's being proposed, what's the value, is everyone on board to do this and then utilize it, that really does highlight a breakdown overall, where we just need to get on the same page. And I really do think we have all of the talent that we need. And I appreciate, everyone that we have. I adore our staff, and I think we have amazing staff members. But we aren't communicating effectively. We aren't on the same page. And that goes for us as board members as well. I'm certainly not excluding, myself from that. I think I had a conversation recently where I said, I don't know what I don't know, because I'm only 2 years into this. And so gaining that clarification for myself personally, I think would be very valuable. But yeah, I think that really highlights, that was my aha moment, was, oh, yeah, that does make sense. Because yeah, we should be either all in complete agreement or all in complete disagreement. No, we don't need this, or yes, we need this. And the fact that we're waffling, and some of us are like, okay, this sounds good, but then it maybe not. Yeah.
There's always the conversation out there too, and we see it all over the place, being reactive. Nobody wants to be in that position where you're being reactive. You want to be proactive. So this is a great step forward in that, is, being proactive. The other part is the conversation on morale of staff and morale of the board and morale of the community. Is this something that will identify what needs to be identified and give you a path forward? So that's the other side of this too, is that it can help in those elements too. Again, it's a DCED best practice. This isn't just something that we just came up with.
I'm going to add on to something that Bridget said. I know my experience, and this is my 6th year, and I still don't know what I don't know. But I'm just saying this to staff because I've gotten this reaction, especially early on, from certain staff members. When I ask a question, they take it as, what did I do wrong? Or what's the matter? Or what is she, looking? And I'm asking questions because I don't know and I want to understand. And I think that staff is going to have to take that attitude in when Nicole comes in asking all kinds of questions and things, because she's trying to find out what's going on and how to make us better. And I'm, as I said, the other thing is, if we decide to go forward with this, we all have to commit to implementing the program, no matter what it says, whether we like it or think it's going to be hard or whatever. Because as she said, there's no sense spending the money with, and not implementing it.
Well, and I mean, the reality is another community could use our help too. So if, we just won't want to waste that. So that's, you being a small staff and doing what we do, that's our reality too. So we like to be very clear about it. And we understand that you don't know what you don't know. That's one of our core foundations in what we do, is we spend a lot of time educating. We spend a lot of time working. One day, you're a normal resident. The next day, if you were elected into office, you're a policymaker. What does that mean? How do you get to where you need to be? And realize that when we're doing this whole entire process, we're looking at the organization in whole, not one person, not two people. We're diving in, and the way that I really like the way that we go about it, because it allows open communication. And then what we do is we take everything out into themes and patterns and identify it in that way, not by person. So it gives the ability to talk. It gives the ability, and we spend a lot of time listening.
Bill, is there anything you would like to add?
Well, we've already gone through the one phase that you helped us in the visioning section. I just don't see this as something that I think is really that valuable at this point in time. I mean, I think we have a good staff. Some of them have a way to go. But as far as emergency management, I know we have emergency management coordinator. And I think the police and public works all have a good idea of what they have to do, when they have to do it. They've shown that through various storms. As far as, I think the key thing for us over the next couple of years is going to be, what are we going to do with the police retrofit? And the key thing there is to make sure that we have the right people on board to do this. And whether we go through this exercise or not, I think that's going to be up to us to decide who the key people are that are going to put the project forward. So,
Bill, can I ask you a question? Because I'm a little confused. When we all sat here, including Stephanie and you, at the Visioning Center, a session with these two, you agreed at that time that we needed to do this, as did Stephanie. So I'm not sure why you, and I'm pointing out that you are the one that's concerned about our very high engineers' bills. And considering the work that our engineers do, that's basically somewhat administrative in nature because we don't have the right person in the right place. I think we'd make this back in within a month or two, savings on our engineer bills. And you voted for $14,000 for space planning, for furniture. But this is governance of the township isn't as important to you as space planning for furniture?
well, I can't defend the space planning for furniture because I wasn't really that much in favor of it, but
You voted for it. I was the only one that opposed that money. But anyway,
okay, well, I personally just don't feel that we need this at this point in time.
There's five of us. We can all have different opinions. Any other questions from? No? Any questions from the public?
what's what?
Yeah. Dan.
It's always valuable to take a look.
We've had so many transitions in the last few years. I think we all want the same thing. We want this township to succeed. We all have a great basis. Our staff is awesome and have done awesome things. I think we need to be able to work together and move in one direction. Not that we're not moving that way, but I think this would help us. So if there are no other questions from any staff, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the action items. I'll consider a motion to approve the strategic organizational assessment proposal from the Minor Centre. Do I have a motion?
I will make the motion to approve that and to do this assessment.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Mary Beth and Bridget, no more comments from the board or anything? No? I shall call the question. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, motion passes 3-1. Thank you very much. And we will wait for the next step in the motion.
Thank you.
Is there any other business to conclude? No? I will just say happy Labor Day, everyone. Have a safe and wonderful weekend and all good luck for the start of school on Tuesday.
Oh, they did start.
Yeah. Central Bucks hasn't started. I know North Penn has.
Yeah.
They started just yesterday,
We have,
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
we have residents, a small portion of our township that we don't claim in Bucks County. They go to Montgomery County schools and pay Montgomery County school taxes and vote for Montgomery County School Board.
But just that. That's the only thing we vote for in Montgomery County.
Don't ask me.
It doesn't
Some
make,
historical nonsense.
I don't know who made that decision.
I think we should invade Line Lexington and take it back.
Take us back.
Okay.
You already have it. You just have to, have it
Schools
changed.
We just have to redistrict.
Good luck with that one.
Could you do that after my kids graduate? That would be awesome. So I am going to need 3 more years and we can do that.
Okay.
Okay. With that, I ask for a motion to adjourn at 11 o'clock.
I'll make that motion.
Mary Beth and Bill second. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you very much. We will see you at the next Board of Supervisors meeting, which is Monday, September the 15th at 7 p.m. Wonderful weekend. Thank you very much.
Joy.